Hi guys. So today we are going to look at how to calculate the pH that we talked about yesterday. So if you haven't done yesterday's lesson on pH yet, you want to go do that one first because that's going to give you some information about what the numbers are, what they mean, and why we're calculating them. So if you're ready for today's lesson, make sure you've got some scrap paper where you can write these things down. And then you also need a calculator that has a log button on it. So here's one calculator that has a log button. It's right here. If you don't have this, but you do have a cell phone, and you open the calculator function on your cell phone, and then if you turn your cell phone sideways, so like here's my cell phone the regular calculator way, there's no log button, but if I turn it sideways, you can see all those other buttons appear. So this log button right here is the one we're going to be using. So either calculator should work. In the event that you don't have either of those at home with you, your third option would be to go online. I'll link on the next slide of this presentation an online calculator that will have a log button, or you can go online and search one on your own. Okay. So what I've done here is I've written out two examples of the type of problem you're going to see today. We're just going to look at one type of problem. They're really straightforward once you figure out how to put them in your calculator. So that's what I'm going to help you see. So if we look at this first problem here, it reads that the H plus concentration, which if you remember from our understandings of acids and bases, the H plus concentration tells us how much of our acid has separated apart into H's and then whatever the rest of the acid is. So for example, if we're talking about like HCl, how much of it has separated apart into H plus and Cl minus, and how much of it is still left as the whole acid, the HCl. So this says the H plus concentration, that's what these little brackets mean, is 4.65 times 10 to the negative ninth. So if you remember back to the beginning of the year talking about these numbers, these scientific notation numbers, a negative exponent means that it's a really, really small number. Okay. So we want to use this concentration of H plus, or how much H plus we have in our solution, to figure out what the pH of that solution is. Okay. So in order to do this, we are going to use a formula that we're going to use every time we calculate pH. So that formula is pH equals the negative log of the H plus concentration. Okay. So really all we're going to have to do is use the log button on our calculator and then put this number in. It's super straightforward. So when I type this into my calculator, I'm going to type in negative log of, in this case, I'm going to use this number, 4.65 times 10 to the negative ninth. And then I'm just going to hit enter. So let me show you one way to do this on the calculator. Okay. So looking at this calculator here, we said that we wanted to use, here's our problem. So we want to do the negative log, and then we want to type in that number, 4.65 times 10. And then there's this little caret button that makes our number an exponent. So we want to do 2 the negative ninth. Close the parentheses, hit enter. That's it. So if we look at this, this tells us that the pH of this solution is going to be 8.33. So to solve that problem, pH equals 8.33. That would be my answer. Now I know, because I've learned about pH at this point, that 8.33 is actually a slightly basic solution. So it's just above 7. Remember, 7 is neutral. So I'm in the base range, but it's just a very, very slightly basic solution. Remember, bases go from above 7 to 14. Okay. So let's look at another example of this. Okay. So this one, instead of having these brackets, oops, sorry, you can't see that. Instead of having these brackets around H+, they've actually written it out. So it says the concentration of H+ is 1 times 10 to the negative 8th. Find the pH. Same exact process. So pH equals the negative log of the H+ concentration. So that means in this case, it equals the negative log of 1 times 10 to the negative 8th. So if I pull out my handy dandy calculator, we'll use this one this time. Okay. Let's pull this down so we can see the problem too. All right, so there's the problem and the calculator. So we want the negative log, oops, so when we're using this calculator, we're going to have to put them in a different order. So we want to do parentheses 1 times 10 to the 9th. So that would be 1 times 10 to the negative 9th. So now I'm going to take the log of that number, but I'm going to take the negative log of that number. Okay, so let me talk you through how we did that. This is the answer, by the way. The answer is 9. So let's talk through how that happens. So first thing we had to do, on our phone calculator, it's a little bit more complicated. It still works though. So we had to put this number in first. So this was 1 times 10. And then there's this x to the y button that says we're going to take this number and we're going to raise it to an exponent. So we want to do x to the y, and then the exponent that we want to raise it to is a negative 9. So I typed in the 9, and then this plus minus sign up here to make it a negative 9. At that point, I hit enter. So that gives me this number. Then I want to take the negative log of that number. So I'm going to take the log of that number, but I want it to be negative, which gives me the 9. So one thing I just noticed as I was putting all of this in the calculator, I was using 9 here instead of 8. So technically, the pH of 9 would be for this problem that said that it would be 1 times 10 to the 9th. However, in our case, this problem is 1 times 10 to the negative 8th. So let's just fix that really quick, get another opportunity to practice with the calculator. So here's 1 times 10. And then we're going to use the x to the y button because we want 10 to the negative 8th. And then we want to do 8 negative. So there's 10 to the negative 8th. Now I need to take the negative log of that number. So I'm going to use my log button. And then it's negative, so we're switched the sign. So that gives us a pH of 8. Okay. So you can see 2 different calculators. It's definitely a little bit easier if you have an actual scientific calculator at home. They do a little bit more of the thinking for you. As opposed to a phone calculator, they're a little bit more complicated. However, they both will work, just like an online calculator will work. Okay. The most important part of this is going to be remembering this step right here. This equation is how you are going to solve for pH every single time when you're given how much H+ is in your solution. Okay. So on the next slide, you're going to have a couple of practice problems and then some answers to check to see if you're getting it. And then the end of the lesson will be an understanding check, just like we've done every other day, so that you can show me that you're getting it. Hopefully we're all getting it, and tomorrow we can move on to something called POH. Really similar, just a slightly different name, and we can keep going from there. If you have any questions, make sure to check out office hours. We can go through some more of these problems, help you figure out how to use your calculator or whatever you need. Okay, talk to you soon.